The crown prince fell in love with the mute girl who saved him and insisted on breaking off our engagement. I offered well-meaning advice. The mute girl is vulnerable. Why not take her as a concubine first? Feeling humiliated, she took her own life in shame and anger. 10 years later, the first act of the crown prince upon ascending the throne was to depose me as empress and exterminate my entire clan. This is what you owe, Ruoruo. When I awoke again, it was my 16th birthday banquet. The host asked what wish I held. I only pray that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Miss Lu grow old together, their hearts forever bound. I bowed reverently. Your Majesty, please grant them marriage. Main text, I died on a snowy day. I could have held on until spring, but Chu Heng couldn't wait. The dagger pierced my chest inch by inch, blood flooding the bed. Still, he wasn't satisfied. He twisted the handle, letting the cold blade churn through my flesh and blood. The pain nearly choked me, yet I asked, unwilling to accept my fate, why? I couldn't understand. We'd known each other since childhood, friends since we were little. For over a decade, my father and brothers served the emperor loyally, aiding him wholeheartedly. Before he consolidated imperial power, they had already surrendered their military authority and voluntarily accepted blame. Yet he still fabricated a baseless charge, condemning my entire Xie clan to death. Why, Chu Heng? I clutched his wrist desperately. Chu Heng's face was paler than the vast snow outside. Though he was the one who struck the fatal blow, his expression made it seem as if I had wronged him. This is what you owe, Ruoruo. He gritted his teeth. Ruoruo? Lu Ruoruo? The memory was too distant, and it took effort to recall that name. And the face behind it, fragile as a willow in the wind. I couldn't help but laugh. 10 years. So all these years, Chu Heng never forgot her. He blamed her death on me, on the entire Xie clan. Chu Heng, you really are. Fool! Before the last syllable escaped my lips, Chu Heng had already drawn his dagger. Red blood spilled freely, a droplet landing beneath my tongue. Sweet and metallic. It reminded me of that year, when Mother, her eyes red from exhaustion, stewed a bowl of blood swallows for me. Young lady, is your heart aching again? The cloud-like snow vanished. The bone-chilling cold vanished. Spring was in full bloom, people bustling about. My 16th birthday banquet. Ah, yes. Heaven must have opened its eyes, then closed them again. When they opened once more, I hadn't died. Not only had I not died, but I'd returned to the year I turned 16. This was the year my brother won a great victory, the year father achieved remarkable success in managing the floods. This was the year I hadn't yet married Chu Heng. How could your heart not ache? Came a mocking voice from behind. Last night, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince knelt all night at the gate of the Hall of Diligent Governance, demanding to annul his betrothal to the minister's household. Heng Yan turned to go, but I stopped her. It wasn't just about breaking off the betrothal to me. This year, Chu Heng encountered danger while suppressing bandits. He fell from a cliff and was saved by an orphaned girl. The orphan was beautiful and gentle. To save him, she tasted hundreds of herbs. Not only did she ruin her health, but she was also poisoned, leaving her voice hoarse like a nightingale's. Deeply moved, Chu Heng brought her back to the palace. Counting yesterday, he had knelt in the Hall of Diligent Governance for 3 days and nights straight. He intended to marry her as crown princess. Miss, don't listen to the idle gossip outside. The bond you and His Highness the Crown Prince shared since childhood, His Highness's feelings for you. I looked at Heng Yan and shook my head at her. Heng Yan's words abruptly halted. I knew exactly what she meant to say. 3 days prior, I had awakened in the Ministry of State's residence. 3 days were sufficient for me to piece together my past and present lives. Miss. Heng Yan's eyes suddenly brightened as she whispered, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is approaching. I looked up to see Chu Heng, clad in his customary crown prince's attire, making his way toward me amidst a crowd of attendants. The murmurs behind him vanished instantly. Chu Heng and I were childhood sweethearts. Our betrothal was sealed before we were even born. From the start, whenever anyone spoke ill of me, he was the first to defend me. When he erred and faced punishment, I was the first to plead for his mercy. Until now, no one doubted I was Chu Hang's one true love. The only choice for crown princess. But today, on my 16th birthday, he brought another woman. Ruoruo was slender and pale, clinging to his side like a frightened bird. Chu Heng knelt all night, showing no sign of fatigue. Instead, a smile played on his lips as he whispered something affectionately in her ear. She looked at me, her expression instantly shifting to panic and disarray. She took several long strides forward. With a thud, she knelt before me. It was truly identical to my past life. Even the single tear, poised to fall from her lashes, was exactly the same. In my previous life, it was this pitifully vulnerable appearance that had bewitched me, leading me to sincerely scheme for her and Chu Heng. Born into the Xie clan, and my future husband was the crown prince. I never harbored illusions of one lifetime, one love, one partner. Her appearance stirred a bitter ache within me, yet I maintained my composure. When Chu Heng sought to annul the betrothal, I did not weep or protest. Out of years of affection, I offered sincere counsel. Miss Lu has no support in the capital and bears a physical flaw. Though she acted to save you. Even if she kneels until her knees break, His Majesty would never grant her the position of principal wife. Instead, it would only bring disaster upon her. Your Highness, perhaps we should settle for the next best option, bring her into the Eastern Palace first, and in the future. My words were deliberately vague. What the future holds, is that not entirely up to your Highness? With just these few sentences, I averted disaster for her, yet brought calamity upon myself. Thud. 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 In my past life, the moment I saw Lu Nuan kneel, I rushed to help her up. This time, I merely watched coldly as she began banging her head against the floor without hesitation. Thud after thud, the sound echoed relentlessly. Hong Yen tugged at my sleeve. So many guests are watching us today. I brushed her hand away. What's the rush? Ju. Chu Heng's expression had already darkened. In just a moment, Lu Ju's forehead was already bleeding. Paired with her tears threatening to spill, she looked pitifully vulnerable. She glanced back at Chu Heng, then at me, bit her lip, and continued her prostrations. I leisurely picked up the teacup in my hand. Suddenly, I felt curious, just how far could she take this act? Indeed. Lu Ju was pretending. Her muteness was feigned, her pitiable demeanor was feigned, and even her suicide out of shame and humiliation in her previous life was feigned. In the silent, deserted corner of Chang'an Street, I heard her voice, sweet as a nightingale's song, with my own ears. She sobbed as she pleaded with a masked figure, "Master, I am but an orphaned girl. If I do not resort to such desperate measures, how could the prince ever take notice of me? Master, please give me another dose of the fake death potion. Master, Ruoruo truly admires His Highness the Crown Prince. I know my place, even becoming his concubine would be beyond my station. But His Highness once promised me the position of principal wife. I must create some drama in this matter to make him feel guilty toward me. Master, please grant Ruoruo this favor. Just one act of feigned death, and His Highness will remember his debt to me for the rest of his life." What a master of deception. She deceived Chu Heng. She deceived me. She deceived every noble and dignitary in the capital. I once asked Chu Heng why he cherished Ruoruo above all others. I was born crown prince. Everyone fawned over me, held me up on a pedestal. Their respect and affection stemmed solely from my status. Even you, Shuin, if I weren't crown prince, would you still love me? His words left me speechless then. Had he not been crown prince, our betrothal would never have existed. We wouldn't have grown up together. What love could there be? Only Ruoruo. She was willing to sacrifice her life for me even before knowing my true status. Shuin, how could I resist such pure love? I nearly got caught in his web. As a noble woman, I always weighed every consequence. I had to consider my parents, my family. I certainly wouldn't risk my life for just anyone. We both overlooked another possibility. Even if Chu Heng had fallen off a cliff, the mere garments he wore would have revealed his noble status. Whether as a young master, a crown prince, or the heir apparent. From the very beginning, Ruoruo had made up her mind. To climb onto his high branch. Enough! Chu Heng barked. Silence fell around them. Lu Ju trembled, lifting her head timidly, her bright eyes pleadingly fixed on me. The implication was clear. She felt remorseful for disrupting my marriage and turning me into the capital's laughingstock. She wouldn't stop unless I spoke. Very well. Then carry on. I raised my eyebrows slightly, lowered my gaze, and sipped my tea. Lu Jiao gritted her teeth, bending to kowtow again. Chu Heng suddenly strode forward. Crack, he swept the teacup from my hand. Xia Shuyin, don't push your luck. Xia Shuyin, is this the bearing of the eldest daughter of the Xia family? Chu Heng's cold glare sent the surrounding servants kneeling in shock. He turned, pulled Lu Jiao up, and tenderly touched her forehead. Xia Shuyin, apologize. Apologize now, and I'll pretend nothing happened. I nearly laughed out loud. How naive I was back then. After catching Lu Ju, I wrote to Chu Heng that very night, informing him of what I had seen and heard. I urged him to keep an eye on Lu Ju. The next day, Lu Ju was dead. Truly dead. Rumors spread that she refused to become a concubine and took her own life in shame and anger. Chu Heng replied to me, fortunate that Shuyin reminded me. Those who deceive me shall be executed. After that, the matter was closed. All these years, I believed he had played along with the scheme and killed Lu Ju. After all, he always hated being deceived most of all. Until the moment before his death. It turned out that the deceiver he spoke of was me. Xia Shuyin, have you lost your voice? Jueju did nothing wrong. It was I who wished to call off the engagement. Apologize to her. I won't hold her forehead wound against you. I stared at Chu Heng, my lips curling slightly. I was blind. I'd always thought him wise and shrewd. Heng Yan, is His Majesty in the front hall? I turned to the maid beside me. Heng Yan nodded blankly. I lifted my skirt and walked forward. Chu Heng followed closely behind. What do you intend to do? Father Emperor is traveling incognito this time and did not summon the womenfolk. Of course I knew. The birthday banquet of a mere minister's daughter was hardly worthy of the Emperor condescending to grace our residence with his presence. But why was His Majesty here? Because both my elder brothers are on the frontier, bringing frequent reports of victory. Because my father has just managed the floodwaters, earning widespread praise from the people. Because the Xia clan has endured for a century, and most of the pillars of the court come from its ranks. Yet His Royal Highness the Crown Prince knelt for 3 days and nights, demanding to annul our betrothal. His Majesty fears only that he might displease my father and brothers. Even as the eunuch announced our arrival, Chu Heng still followed close behind me. Shuyin, do not presume to demand from the Emperor what does not rightfully belong to you, merely because of your birth. I have already promised Ruoruo the position of principal consort. I shall not break my word. If you insist on marrying me, then you can only be a secondary consort. I glanced back at Chu Heng. As he said, he was born to be crown prince. His life had been too smooth. He hadn't realized what the position of crown princess meant to him. Perhaps my gaze was too cold, for Chu Heng faltered. Just then, the Emperor spoke from his seat. Shuyin, you were eager to see me. Is there something important? The hall was filled with guests. I knelt. Your Majesty, today is this humble servant's birthday. May I dare to request a favor? The Crown Prince and Miss Lu share a love forged through hardship. This humble servant truly envies them. I fear it might jeopardize their vow to grow old together, bound in eternal devotion. Your Majesty, I beg you to annul the marriage contract between this humble servant and His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Grant them a royal marriage instead. I knelt reverently upon the floor. Silence filled the chamber, thick enough to hear a pin drop. Before evening fell, the news spread throughout the capital. The marriage between the Crown Prince and the Xia family seemed destined to collapse. The Crown Prince's request to marry his savior had already caused quite a stir. Today, the eldest daughter of the Xia family, long regarded as a model of nobility, had actually requested the Emperor to annul the betrothal before all the officials at her own birthday banquet. It was said the Crown Prince's expression at that moment was quite something. His Majesty had even directly called him a rebel son and hurled a teacup at him. Nonsense. Kneeling on the ground, I too had not escaped a teacup. Who gave you the audacity to act so brazenly? My father's beard seemed ready to fly off in fury. A broken engagement, huh? Marriage is a matter of parental decree and matchmaker's words. How dare you, a mere woman, meddle in it? And you dare run to His Majesty to act insolently. I stood with my back straight, not even flinching. A marriage decreed by the late emperor, do you think you can simply annul it? You will go to the palace immediately to beg forgiveness, claiming it was a moment of passion, words spoken without restraint. I won't go. I declared flatly. Won't go? And what do you intend to do instead? Annul the marriage. Annul the marriage? Annul it? Do you think anyone in the capital would dare marry you after that? I pursed my lips. Not necessarily. You. My father pointed at me. You're possessed. He stormed off, flinging his sleeves behind him. I was indeed possessed. Without the experiences of my past life, I could never have done any of this. From childhood, I was trained to be proper and restrained. Not only would I never have initiated a marriage annulment, but in the past, with so many male guests in the front hall, I wouldn't have dared show my face at all. But being proper and restrained never led to a good outcome. For 100 years, the Xie clan knew when to advance and when to retreat. When the court needed them, they charged forward bravely. When the court was stable, they withdrew at the height of their power. Absolute loyalty earned the absolute trust of every successive ruler. My father, my brothers and uncles, all adhered to our ancestral teachings. Thus, in my past life, when Chu Heng showed the slightest sign, they acted without hesitation. Some relinquished power, others resigned their posts. Yet Chu Heng caught them completely off guard. It proved that absolute loyalty to a fool is called blind loyalty. Young lady, what did His Highness the Crown Prince say? Hong Yan couldn't read. While applying a poultice to my knee, she leaned in, her eyes fixed anxiously on the letter in my hand. In the past, Chu Heng and I exchanged countless letters, pouring out our hearts. This time, only 4 characters, know when to stop. I tugged at the corners of my lips and tossed it into the lamp. Miss. Hong Yan panicked. Miss, if His Highness apologizes, just soften your stance. I cut her off. Besides the letter, were any of my belongings delivered today? Hong Yan froze. Yes. She handed me a piece of white jade from the trousseau, her eyes suddenly brightening. Today is your birthday, miss. Could this also be from His Highness the Crown Prince? My own eyes lit up. I rose and took my cloak. Miss, what has gotten into you these past days? You're going out so late. Wait for me. Hong Yan, stay here. I closed the door, turned, and stepped out. The person I was these past days was no longer the person I had been before. The rule-abiding Xie Shuyin of days past had died long ago. What remained was only the rebellious Xie Shuyin. The man before me was gaunt and pale. A single mole at the corner of his eye glowed with an unnatural, almost demonic red. He looked vastly different from the man I remembered. I studied him, and he studied me. His dark eyes held a faint, seemingly careless gaze. Miss Xie lives up to her reputation. Graceful and dignified. His voice fell like pearls. I smiled at him. The Crown Prince also lives up to his reputation. The essence of pine and cypress. The corners of his lips lifted slightly, and he too gave a very faint smile. Both of us were speaking in platitudes, each knowing the other's true meaning. The melons and fruits Miss Xie sent the day before yesterday, he said, nudging the fruit bowl before him. They're ripe now. I held out the white jade in my hand. Your Highness, I've received your beautiful jade. I picked a piece of fruit from the bowl. He reached for the jade. I closed my palm. His hand froze. I looked at him and smiled. His name was Chu Yu. The eldest son of His Majesty, the elder brother of Chu Heng. Father was right, my betrothal to Chu Heng, bestowed by the late emperor, cannot be dissolved at will. Yet I knew all too well that this marriage must end. On the first day after my rebirth, tossing and turning, I searched my memories for this man. High status, privileged position, and most crucially, he died young. Strictly speaking, he was the emperor's legitimate eldest son. The crown prince's position should have been his. My betrothal should have been his. But his birth mother was frail and passed away after giving birth to him. He too was frail. Before his first birthday, the imperial sage declared he wouldn't live past 18. Thus, the crown prince's position was forever beyond his reach. In my previous life, though he did survive past 18, he barely clung to life for another 6 years. Yet he clearly harbored ambition. He never took a wife, had no children. When he passed, the wealth in his mansion exceeded half the national treasury. I dare not imagine what might have been had he lived longer, or been in better health. What do you mean, Miss Xia? Chu Yu's dark eyes fixed on me. Xia Shuyin despises fools most of all. I raised an eyebrow at him. Before we form an alliance, let me see what you're capable of. Chu Yu smiled. This time it was genuine, bringing a faint glow to his pallid face. He slowly raised his cup and took a sip of tea. Private exchanges, for the Xia Shuyin of old, this would have been unthinkable. But I needed an ally. And a wise one at that. The capital city remained calm. Rumors circulated for days before dissipating on their own. How could the marriage between the crown prince and the Xia family possibly fall through? The eldest daughter of the Xia clan was destined to become empress. If the crown prince wouldn't take her, who dared? Chu Heng was thoroughly enjoying himself. Since His Majesty never greeted him with a pleasant expression, he simply took Ruoruo hunting. Absent from the capital, he naturally remained unaware of the flurry of transactions between merchant houses over the past month. Or perhaps, even had he been present, he wouldn't have cared. The crown prince's household lacked neither silver nor resources. Even if it did, the Xia clan would replenish it. He also missed the quiet personnel changes within the crown prince's quarters. After all, they were merely maids and matrons, insignificant figures. Is that all? The correspondence between Chu Heng and me shifted to correspondence between Chu Yu and me. But the frail crown prince was not one for many words. He did not reply to this letter. Within days, a new drama unfolded in the capital. A noble young master was saved by an orphaned girl, and they secretly pledged their lives to each other. Yet the orphaned girl came from a commoner background, while the noble young master belonged to a prestigious family. Such a woman could never be accepted as the head mistress of the household. Of course, in the end, they defied societal shackles and remained devoted to each other. At the play's conclusion, the nobleman delivered a stirring speech. What of commoners? Why should they be barred from becoming a family's matriarch? To repay kindness is the way of the noble. If one cannot be a gentleman, how can one lead a clan? The plot was all too familiar, and as the play gained popularity, public discourse erupted instantly. Why should commoners be barred from becoming the mother of a nation? If the crown prince cannot even repay kindness, how can he rule a kingdom? The crown prince marrying a mute girl is the conduct of a gentleman. The crown prince should marry the mute girl. Almost simultaneously, a wondrous spectacle erupted in the forest where the crown prince was hunting. Hundreds of birds circled the horse where the mute girl sat, swirling and singing. 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. Thus, when the crown prince returned to the capital, the people lined the streets to welcome him. He embraced the mute girl before him, radiant with triumph. Quite ingenious. Using popular sentiment to force His Majesty to yield. Moreover, it killed 3 birds with 1 stone. It cut off Chu Heng's path, severed my father's retreat, and sowed discord between Chu Heng and His Majesty. What 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix? Nothing but a trick to deceive the people. His Majesty won't suspect Chu Yu, who lives secluded and rarely appears in public. He'll only think all this is Chu Heng's doing. As for Chu Heng, in his excitement, he'll likely feel heaven itself is aiding him. What do you think? Not bad. Is that all? I smiled. I send someone to deliver that piece of white jade. You give me a quince, I repay you with jade. Not merely repayment, but a lasting bond of goodwill. I added, Your Highness, why not press your advantage? Miss Xia, are you certain? Absolutely. Having forged this alliance, the first move of my rebirth allowed no room for hesitation. For 3 full days, Hong Yan railed against Chu Heng and Lu Ju's brazen display. But shameless was the harshest insult she could muster. This time, not even rumors circulated in the capital. Everyone was certain the marriage between the eldest daughter of the Xia clan and the crown prince would inevitably be called off. They were just waiting to see her humiliation. My marriage was indeed called off. But they never got to see my humiliation. It was said that day, the imperial palace was bustling with activity. Chu Heng led a procession of scholars who publicly supported the mute girl as consort, eyewitnesses to the 100 birds paying homage to the Phoenix incident, and several enlightened monks. The entire group knelt before the gates of the Hall of Diligent Governance. My father received the news immediately and hurried to the palace with several uncles and disciples. Never in the Xia clan's century-long history had they been so humiliated. Your Majesty, since His Royal Highness the Crown Prince has made his decision, we implore you to grant his wish. We, your subjects, have no complaints whatsoever. Another imposing line of kneeling petitioners formed. All this uproar, all this humiliation, over a mere mute girl. The emperor had raged and seethed. But matters had reached this point. How could he refuse? What other choice did he have? Yet as the city whispers, who would dare marry the eldest daughter of the Xia clan, a family that held sway over half the court and had been betrothed to His Royal Highness for over a decade, after this marriage was annulled? Having ruined Xia Shuin's life thus, how could His Majesty ever face his loyal ministers again? Would the century-long harmony between the Xia clan and the imperial house be shattered? Just as the situation reached a stalemate, an unexpected figure appeared. Truthfully, that day I had deliberately sent Chu a note, dress well. Don't be fooled by my father's solemn demeanor. He judges people by their looks above all. Thus, according to the rumors, when that person appeared, his eyes and brows were charming, his demeanor as graceful as a painting. He seemed like a celestial being descended from the heavens. Only when he knelt did the crowd realize. This was the ailing crown prince, secluded and rarely seen, almost forgotten by the people. And when he spoke, his words were even more astonishing. Father, your son begs to marry Xia Shuin as his wife. One sentence shattered the stalemate. His Majesty was startled to realize he'd forgotten he even had a son, one whose health was fragile, yet who had already outlived the 18th birthday foretold by the imperial sage. My father was startled to see how, after years apart, this eldest prince had blossomed into such otherworldly beauty, far more pleasing to the eye than that crown prince, who seemed possessed by some curse. A single glance between sovereign and subject, and they understood each other. Only His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, it was said, wore an utterly priceless expression, so startled he nearly leapt to his feet. Before he could speak, His Majesty had already issued the imperial decree. The marriage contract between Xia Shu and the Crown Prince was annulled. The match was instead bestowed upon the eldest prince. The Crown Prince was instead betrothed to the mute maiden Lu Ju, with the wedding to be held at a later date. Thus, the matter was settled. When I received the imperial decree, I felt a long-forgotten sense of joy. The first move had gone so smoothly, far beyond my expectations. This proved how crucial it was to choose the right allies. Yet no sooner had I received the edict than Chu Heng arrived. Finally able to wed his beloved, instead of going to be lovey-dovey with Lu Ju, he comes to cause me trouble? I ordered, the Crown Prince and his dog are forbidden to enter. Alas, only the wild geese in my courtyard dared to shout this at him. Chu Heng raged outside the courtyard, Xia Shuin, I see you've lost your mind. I came in good faith to warn you, Chu is a worthless fool. If you know what's good for you, find a way to call off this marriage. Or you'll regret it bitterly. My mood was too cheerful to even lift an eyebrow for him. I only slowly unfolded the letter in my hand. When will you make your next move? This ally of mine is indeed far more ambitious than that bird outside. I picked up my brush, no rush. Just watch the show unfold. Before Chu Heng killed me, he actually said many things. But the pain was too intense then, I can't recall most of it. One line stands out most vividly. If not for you, if not for your Xia clan, Ruoruo and I could have grown old together. This lifetime has no place for me, no place for the Xia clan. I'll be damned if I don't see how he and Ruoruo managed to grow old together. In the side chamber, the scent of tea wafted gently. An epidemic has erupted in the south. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince volunteering to lead the relief effort is commendable, but is it proper to bring female attendants? Why wouldn't it be? A mute maiden. Though not yet formally wed, she's the phoenix among birds, blessed by heaven. I hear she's skilled in medicine too, she might even benefit the common folk. Tea houses never lack those who discuss current affairs. Is this the spectacle you spoke of? His Royal Highness the Crown Prince journeyed south to aid the disaster-stricken, bringing along the mute maiden who had yet to formally become his bride. The city was abuzz with talk. I raised my eyebrows and sipped my tea. Of course, there was more to it. Shuin's character is as rich and mellow as tea itself. Thankfully, some people are blind. Chuyu suddenly laughed. I lifted my gaze. This man was indeed quite handsome, especially when he smiled. The small mole at the corner of his eye held a unique charm. Over the past months, we'd often shared tea together. His words knew when to advance and retreat, and we got along well. It was just. Looking down, he was undeniably very thin. Noticing my gaze, Chuyu glanced at my teacup and leaned over to pour me some tea. A prince, involved in commerce, yet carrying the scent of ink. Why so quiet today? He asked, glancing at me as he poured. It wasn't that I was quiet. I was thinking about Chu Heng's words. Chuyu is nothing but a useless man. Hey. I grabbed his collar directly. Can you even have children? Chuyu's eyelid fluttered. He slowly set down the teapot. His gaze lifted, serene, yet the mole at his temple glowed crimson. He pinched my chin. Want to try? I really did want to try. If Chuyu couldn't father children, wouldn't my entire chess game be for naught? But no matter how rebellious I was, I couldn't test it in a tea house. A month later, the play I'd invited Chuyu to see finally opened. The Crown Prince journeyed south to combat the plague, accompanied by a mute girl he loved beyond measure. Unexpectedly, the mute girl contracted the disease. When her condition showed no improvement, the anxious Crown Prince sent her back to the capital. Her return was one thing, but no one anticipated the Crown Prince would follow. He'd been drugged unconscious by the mute girl's medicine and carried back. Your Highness already showed symptoms. I was near death myself, how could I leave you there to perish? In my past life, Ruoruo pleaded tearfully on paper. An orphaned girl who knew a few characters but had never received proper schooling. The crowd could only remain speechless. A defeated general should at least guard the flag and not fall. The Crown Prince volunteered to enter the epidemic zone, yet not only did he recklessly bring the infected mute girl back to the capital, he also abandoned everyone and fled himself. Moreover, the Crown Prince hadn't even contracted the plague, it was merely a common cold. Last time, Father had suppressed the matter. The officials accompanying him to the epidemic zone happened to be Father's disciples. Before Chu Heng could even enter the city, Father received word. He intercepted them overnight and sent them back, thus preventing the news from leaking out. But this lifetime, Father refused to aid him again. The moment Lu Ju escorted Chu Heng into the capital, the city erupted in uproar. Public condemnation of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince spread like wildfire throughout the populace. His Majesty flew into a rage, denouncing the Crown Prince for misconduct and unworthiness of his position. Truth be told, public opinion could be swayed with a little silver. But such matters couldn't be settled with official funds. Only belatedly did His Royal Highness the Crown Prince realize that over the past half-year, his private assets had either vanished or been depleted. His personal treasury was utterly empty. He couldn't bring himself to lower his dignity and ask for silver. He could only let the rumors continue to ferment. Time to make the next move. I sent a letter to Chuyu. I intended to expose Ruoruo's feigned muteness. Chu Heng had always firmly believed Ruoruo's love for him was pure and unblemished. In his previous life, when Ruoruo brought him back to the capital, he had only sighed faintly afterward, Nua simply cares too much for me. This lifetime, with no one to clean up after him, would he still utter such words? Chuyu had long planted maids and matrons within the Eastern Palace. With a minor scheme, they coaxed a person who could speak to finally open her mouth. It wasn't difficult. I had planned to use the plague as leverage, just to scare her. Little did I know, before I could even begin plotting, someone walked right into the trap. It was said to be one evening. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince had been cursed by the people, cursed by the officials, cursed by His Majesty. His heart was filled with unbearable frustration. He hadn't visited his beloved Ruoruo's quarters for 5 consecutive days. The eastern palace was vast, with an artificial lake and an arched bridge. That night, Ruoruo, true to her name, sat like a delicate willow swaying in the breeze upon the stone railing of the arch bridge. Weeping, she gestured to his Highness. Ruoruo was foolish. Ruoruo has brought shame upon your Highness. Ruoruo is willing to atone. Your Highness, in the next life, Ruoruo will repay your undying devotion. Plop, she plunged into the lake. The crown prince, whose deep affection knew no bounds, naturally followed her in. But whether the hour was too late or the crown prince was simply blind by nature, he flailed about in the water for ages without finding her. The act demanded authenticity. Ruoruo truly couldn't swim. After splashing about, no rescuer appeared. At the critical moment, survival instinct took hold. She screamed at the top of her lungs, "Help! Help me! Your Highness! Your Highness! Ruoruo is here!" Rumor has it the crown prince's expression at that moment was truly spectacular. Alas, he made that face 3 times, and I never got to see any of them. After that, the eastern palace echoed with either angry shouts or heart-wrenching sobs. Not long after, the commotion moved to the Hall of Diligent Governance. His Royal Highness knelt on the ground, refusing to rise. "Father, I beg you to revoke your decree. Your humble son wishes to annul the betrothal. My mother taught me from childhood that as a woman, especially one from a distinguished family, romantic love is terrifying. One must love only 7 parts, reserving 3. Had no one taught this to Crown Prince Chuheng? Perhaps not. Or perhaps he had been utterly spoiled since childhood. Though the Empress was a second wife, her captivating beauty earned her the Emperor's exclusive favor. Before her, the Emperor had a chronically ill eldest son, after her, several delicate princesses. It wasn't until Chuheng turned 14 that another young prince was born. From birth, Chuheng naturally monopolized all imperial resources. He likewise took it for granted that everyone and everything should revolve around him. Whomever he desired to marry, he would obtain. If he refused to marry someone, no one could hold him accountable. The Emperor was so enraged he nearly fainted, immediately summoning the imperial sword. The scandal rocked the entire city. The bride was his, the wedding date imminent, yet he was the one reneging. How would the people view him? How would they regard the Emperor's royal decree? Of course, the executioner didn't actually strike. He merely kicked the man a few times and ordered him to get lost. And so, Chuheng rolled his way right into my courtyard. At that moment, I had just finished testing Chuyu and felt utterly drained. But there was no one left to guard the courtyard, and he pounded on the door so hard it shook the heavens. When I opened the door, I finally saw the spectacular expression. As for Chuyu, he possessed that sharp-edged characteristic of imperial princes. Seeing me rise, he pressed his teeth into my neck twice. Chuheng clearly witnessed this. His eyes flickered with shock, astonishment, and even a hint of something obscure. It took him a long moment to find his voice. "Shuin, you. You too." I adjusted my collar and tilted my head to look at him. Tired of living by the rules, I wanted to break them. "So what?" Chuheng suddenly erupted in anger. "You haven't even married yet. Have you no sense of shame? Your words are inappropriate, Your Highness." I began to speak, but a voice like jade from the inner chambers cut me off. "You've already committed adultery with that mute girl without a matchmaker. What about us?" Chuheng hadn't expected her to still be in my room. His face flushed red, then drained white. "I'm not like my brother, canceling engagements left and right. The one I choose, I'll be faithful to until the end." Chuheng's face turned completely pale. "Also, don't call me Shuin. You should call her imperial sister-in-law." Chuheng's lips trembled, but no words came out. I thought he was going to call her imperial sister-in-law. How boring. I folded my arms and closed the door. "Shuin." Chuheng braced himself against the door. "Shuin, Ruoruo deceived me. Shuin, it's her meddling that brought us to this. Shuin, listen to me. Just the other night, I dreamt. It was clearly me who married you. Madam." Chuyu changed his address abruptly. "The quilt has grown cold. My constitution is weak, I feel chilled. Your Highness, Shall we go inside and speak with the crown prince? Chu Heng fell silent. I closed the door. Whatever shock Chu Heng had endured must have been profound, for upon returning, he actually fell ill. Gone were the bustling affairs of the Hall of Diligent Governance, and the lively scenes of the Eastern Palace were no longer to be seen. Yet the household began preparations for my wedding to Chuyu, leaving me no time for idleness. One day while I was sorting through my dowry, an uninvited guest arrived. Lu Ju knelt before me the moment she saw me, weeping like a broken doll. "Miss Xia, please go to the Eastern Palace and see His Highness." I sidestepped, snatching back the hem of my skirt she nearly grabbed. "Miss Xia, His Highness is gravely ill. He won't wake no matter what. In his dreams, he keeps calling your name. If you go see him, he might just wake up." Hearing Lu Jiao's voice for the second time across 2 lifetimes was no easy feat. I looked down at her from above, not particularly inclined to engage. "Miss Xia, you and His Highness were childhood sweethearts. Please, just go to the East Palace." Lu Jiao began kowtowing again. "This humble maiden dares to hope. If Miss Xia agrees, I'd gladly become his concubine." "Miss Xia, I beg you." Just as I frowned, a cold voice snapped beside me. "What kind of management is this? Letting just any Tom, Dick, and Harry into the mansion? Wow, ever since Han Yin called the crown prince a dog, she's gotten bolder and bolder." "Steward! Show her out." Lu Jiao was expelled from the mansion and never allowed back in. It should have been a trivial matter, but the more I pondered her words, the more uneasy I felt. Chu Heng was ill and called my name? He wasn't that deeply devoted to me. Besides, last time he mentioned dreaming of marrying me. Could he possibly? My entire rebirth was already bizarre, nothing seems impossible now. But what if he remembers his past life? Where would I place my third move? Back then, I boasted to Chuyu that if he allied with me, just 3 moves would suffice to reclaim what rightfully belonged to him. After the tragic death I suffered in my past life, I absolutely cannot let Chu Heng remain the crown prince in peace. Or ascend the throne, for that matter. I had someone keep watch on the Eastern Palace. Chu Heng had already awakened, appearing perfectly normal. Nothing significant had occurred in the Eastern Palace either. The entrance to the Hall of Diligent Governance stood empty. Chu Heng no longer demanded the annulment of the betrothal, instead postponing his wedding to Lu Ju. This only deepened my unease. Chu Heng's nature was relentless, he would not rest until he achieved his goal. Could his delay in the wedding date mean? He too knew that this day was drawing to a close. My third move was made on a certain night, 1 month later. On that night, His Majesty passed away silently in the autumn breeze. Throughout history, the night an emperor passes is the most crucial. But Chu Heng was an exception. He had no rivals. In my previous life, His Majesty passed away in his sleep, discovered only by the eunuchs at dawn. Chu Heng ascended the throne without alarm or peril, calmly and smoothly. But this lifetime, there was Chu Yu. There was me. As long as my third move was executed well enough, precisely enough, kicking Chu Heng out of the game wouldn't be difficult. I prepared everything according to plan. Had heart-to-heart talks with father. Gave Chu the palace defense map. Wrote letters to my 2 brothers. Life in the Eastern Palace remained unchanged. Chu Heng attended court as usual, while Ruoruo continued her tearful lamentations. Soon, a month passed. As night fell, I slipped a note to Chu Heng. Midnight. Meet at the moat. Chu Heng and I actually shared some fond memories. Before Ruoruo appeared, Chu Heng would accompany me to the moat to set lanterns afloat on every birthday. As a child, I knew no shyness, declaring my wishes aloud. Within days, whatever I desired would arrive from the Eastern Palace. As I grew older and stopped voicing them, Chu Heng would always learn of my preferences through those around him. When I reached the moat, he was already there. One glance confirmed my suspicions. The gaze of a young, headstrong crown prince was utterly different from that of a man who had ruled for 10 years. "Shuyin, it's been years since I last came here." He gazed at the murky moat. At this hour, naturally, there were no lanterns. "I remember the year you slipped down there." He pointed to a rocky outcrop below the riverbank. "You cried your eyes out. and I pulled you back up. Your memory is sharp, Your Highness. I smiled faintly. I don't recall. So you intended to distance yourself from me the moment you returned, is that it? What else? I shot him a sidelong glance. Wait to be killed by you again? Chu Heng's eyebrow arched slightly. His voice softened. Shuyin, I wronged you. It was the Qin clan. Only when I pursued the Qin clan did I learn that the little maid by Lu Luo's side came from the Qin clan. After discovering her fake death scheme, I switched her medicine and framed the Xie clan. I trusted you, so I didn't save her in time. But she actually died. I didn't particularly want to hear it. That year's events were suspicious, no need to guess. But what good would knowing the truth do? What shouldn't have been done, he'd already done. Even if she killed herself out of shame and anger because I urged you to take her as a concubine, so what? I stared coldly at Chu Heng. Chu Heng, whether to take her as a concubine was your decision. You wavered when His Majesty firmly refused, didn't you? Yet my well-intentioned suggestion cost my entire clan their lives. I thought. I don't want to hear it. The autumn wind whistled coldly. Chu Heng gazed at me with darkened eyes, then suddenly smiled. I know where the crux lies. He yanked me forward, halting before a great tree. He had brought Lu Ju as well. Her limbs bound, her mouth gagged, she was tied to the trunk. Lu Ju's eyes were already red from crying. Spotting us, she whimpered, tears spilling anew. Those who deceive me deserve death. In the blink of an eye, Chu Heng drew the sword at his waist. One strike severed her throat. This was the woman he claimed to love so dearly. The man before me was likely not just the Chu Heng of 10 years hence. Back then, when he killed me, his face still paled. Today, as he struck, his expression remained unflinching. I clenched my fists. Satisfied now? Lu Ju's eyes remained open. I averted my gaze. Shuyin, I know I was wrong. All these years, I've regretted it daily. I built you. Shut up. I didn't want to hear another word from him. Chu Heng's eyes darkened. Then he laughed. The third hour of the ox. You've been waiting for this moment, haven't you? The third hour of the ox, the hour the imperial physician had declared in my previous life as the emperor's true passing. Shuyin, did you think that without the Xie clan, and by dragging that useless Chiyu into this, you could win? I'll make you see with your own eyes tonight who truly wins and who loses. Chu Heng yanked me onto a horse, charging straight for the imperial city. Just as we entered the city gates, a beam of light shot up from the direction of the palace. A signal flare from the eastern palace. Likely informing him the emperor had passed. Our horses strode through the palace gates as if entering an empty realm. The imperial guards within the palace were already under Chu Heng's control. Eunuchs within the palace looked panicked, kneeling at the sight of the horses. The conflict was already evident. Before the emperor's bedchamber, a dense crowd filled the space. The entire Eastern Palace's 10 Commandments Guard had poured out, mingling with the feathered forest guards, the capital garrison, and the Xie family army. Chu Heng pulled the reins, his thunderous shout piercing the air, "Your Highness." Victory and defeat were plain for all to see. Chi was held by the neck by 2 guards from the 10 Commandery Command. My 2 brothers, who had journeyed far to arrive, had their hands bound, blades pressed against their throats as well. The entire Xie family army knelt half-bent on the ground. What a pitiful sight. Chu Heng dismounted and extended his hand to me. "Come, my Empress." I only stared at him. Chu Heng extended his hand closer, his expression solemn. "Shuyin, in this lifetime, I will make you the happiest Empress." I glanced at the densely packed crowd surrounding us, then lifted my gaze to the moon in the sky. A perfect moment. I looked at Chu Heng and tilted my head. Had we won? Chu Heng furrowed his brow, scanning the surroundings with a flicker of surprise in his eyes. The Xie family's forces were too few. Had they been discovered? Rebellious son! A thunderous shout erupted from ahead. Who do you call this emperor? Chu Heng stared in disbelief at the figure draped in night robes who appeared at the palace chamber's doorway. His Majesty. My third move wasn't actually disrupted by Chu Heng's rebirth. Because I knew people always project their own nature onto others. Especially now that he had become such a cruel, bloodthirsty tyrant. In his eyes, this knight would surely see me harnessing all of Xia's forces to seize the palace, alter His Majesty's will, and elevate Chu to the throne. He wouldn't consider a second possibility. For he too had been eagerly awaiting this night, the day he would reclaim his place above all others. But I would not let him have his wish. From the very beginning, my third move was never about a palace coup. His Majesty was an exemplary ruler. Diligent in governance, loving his people like children, and holding the Xia clan in the utmost respect. Knowing he would pass away silently this very night, why not prepare defenses long ago? Chu Heng, reborn but a month, may not realize that for over half a year now, the Emperor's pulse has been checked 3 times daily, morning, noon, and night. His medicinal decoctions have far exceeded previous quantities. Truthfully, the Emperor's health is far more robust than in his previous life. From the very beginning, my aim was merely to sow distrust between the Emperor and Chu Heng. The first move was thus, and the second move followed the same pattern. The third move involved creating various deceptions to make Chu Heng believe we intended to support Chu and instigate a palace coup. Once he acted, combined with His Majesty's accumulated grievances against him, the abolition of the Crown Prince would become inevitable. Of course, gratitude is due to Lu Jia here. Were it not for her, I would never have known such a strange substance as the fake death potion existed in this world. We sought out her master, conducted several trials, and confirmed it posed no harm to the body while allowing precise control over the duration of the feigned death through dosage. Thus, in the original plan, His Majesty was also to feign death tonight. After Chu Heng's rebirth, the only extra step I took was to invite him to the moat. Had he remained within the palace, he likely would have noticed the irregular numbers of Xia's troops long ago. Seizing the palace? Those numbers wouldn't have been enough. This night's palace coup, of course, also required His Majesty's cooperation. His Majesty trusted Father. Father said Chu Heng might harbor treacherous thoughts, so why not test him? And so he tested him. He just didn't know the potion would induce his feigned death, didn't know this was all part of our unorthodox scheme. I saw Chu Heng again 3 months later, in the Imperial dungeons. Autumn turned to winter, and snow fell from the sky. It bore an uncanny resemblance to the day I died. The Imperial prison was bitterly cold. Chu Heng had grown gaunt, his limbs shackled in iron chains. Clad in thin prison garb, he leaned against a corner. He needn't have been in such a wretched state. But he had been reborn, and his methods in winning over the Imperial guards and the capital garrison had been ruthless. His Majesty had been utterly disillusioned with him, refusing even a final glance before passing. Yes, despite the finest imperial physicians and the most potent medicines, the Emperor's life was prolonged by only 3 months. Hearing voices, Chu Heng lifted his head, then lowered it again. Realizing the visitor was different from usual, he looked up once more. A flicker of light ignited in his eyes. When I entered the cell, he immediately stood up, leaning in to take my hand. I pulled away, and his hand froze midair. Shuyin, you still won't forgive me. I couldn't help but laugh again. Shuyin, we've both come back at last. This is heaven giving us another chance. I don't see it that way. I kept a yard's distance from him. Perhaps we've both returned because some souls were too wronged. Chu Heng's gaze dimmed once more. Chu Heng, do you know why I never conceived in our 10 years of marriage? Chu Heng's eyes fell upon my lower abdomen. Because from the day I married you, Father gave me contraceptive medicine. The imperial in-laws held immense power, it was unwise to bear children now. It would be better to wait until we had achieved our goals and retired before raising offspring. My father, my brothers, my clan, they were so loyal to him. But actually, we did have a child. Chu Heng's pupils suddenly contracted. When you killed me, I was already 3 months pregnant. Why did you? Why didn't I tell you, is it? I stepped closer, lifting my gaze to meet his. Why would I bear a child for a life like yours? Chu Heng's complexion drained inch by inch, revealing a rare expression of agony. Chu Heng, I truly feared you wouldn't return. I feared you'd feel your death unjust. I drew the dagger in my hand and thrust it cleanly into his chest. Chu Heng stared at me in shock, agony spreading from his face to his eyes. I watched him silently. This is what you owe me. The snow fell harder, covering the palace paths. Chu waited for me outside. The ground slippery, he crouched down. Let me carry you. I climbed onto his back. He was actually quite thin, having been ill just recently. But I truly didn't feel like walking myself. His back wasn't particularly warm either, only a faint warmth emanating from the hollow of his neck. Yet I leaned against him. Perhaps because we'd grown so accustomed to working together these past days, perhaps because he never once asked why. Uncontrollably, a few tears fell. He suddenly sighed, "You're not without love." Could it be? I earned all that silver just so you could become Empress? So the treasury would be full, and things could be stable? I jumped off his back in an instant. Hey, now that you've achieved your goal, you're playing the emotional card with me? Trying to soften my heart and make me back down? Chuyu rubbed his nose. You've seen through me. On the day Chuyu ascended the throne, he split the imperial seal in two. As agreed, we would co-govern the realm and deliberate on state affairs together. But it seemed I had misjudged him. He didn't appear particularly enthusiastic about being emperor. First, he modestly claimed his energy was insufficient, promoting his father to regent and entrusting most affairs to him. Later, he simply tossed his half of the imperial seal to me. I actually enjoyed discussing matters with him. Talking with someone sharp-witted was a pleasure. Half a year later, I became pregnant. He meddled even less in court affairs, often staying wherever I was. When questioned, he'd simply say, "Father-in-law is handling matters. Rest assured. TSK." And I once called him ambitious. The child's birth went smoothly, a prince. Chuyu was overjoyed, clutching the infant day and night. He wanted to name him Crown Prince immediately. My thoughts naturally turned to Chu Heng, and I shook my head. The following year, I wished to expand the harem. Surely I couldn't bear children alone? Chuyu actually refused. "I'm too weak," he said. No way. That drive he showed even when ill, and now he tells me he's weak. Fine, if he wouldn't agree. But then I turned around and found that half of the imperial seal he'd tossed to me had been snatched back by him. The third year, the child could walk and talk. The palace gradually filled with more laughter and joy. I began urging Chuyu to handle affairs in the front court. My father was growing old, how could he bear to handle every matter himself? My desire for half the imperial seal wasn't really about interest in state affairs. Once bitten by a snake, one fears even a rope for 10 years. By the 4th year, I was pregnant again. Time seemed to have never passed so quickly. Occasionally, Chuyu would ask me, "How many years do I have left?" See? He's sharp as a tack. Not asking doesn't mean he doesn't notice my oddities. When he asked, I'd answer, "Tomorrow. Hurry up. When you're gone, I'll take your silver and keep a whole harem of male favorites. You know I'm the most unorthodox of all." In the 5th year, our second child was born, a little princess. Chuyu's face lit up with joy. He suggested not appointing a crown prince, but perhaps a crown princess instead. I didn't want to engage with him. In the 5th year, Chuyu turned 25. He had already outlived his previous life by 1 year. Surprisingly, I felt no resentment. After all, my original plan had been to spare the father and keep the child. Someone like Chuyu, who didn't require my own hands, was simply perfect. In the 5th year, Chuyu took me to watch the sunrise. The moment the dawnlight pierced the clouds, the entire capital city was serene and peaceful. Descending the mountain, I silently pulled his sleeve. The times were peaceful. Whether long or short, we seized the day. The story ends here. Thank you all for your companionship. See you in the next chapter.